சொல்லுங்க. அப்ப இப்ப ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிட்டு வாங்க. ஓகே. Good morning, everyone. It's my immense pleasure to welcome all our participants in and around India for our national webinar on contemporary critical theories organized by the Department of English, Ma Gregorius College of Arts and Science. Before starting our session, I request all our participants to stop sharing your video and mute your audio during the session to avoid unnecessary interruptions. Participants can post your questions or doubts in the chat box only at last 20 minutes of the session, which will further be answered by our chief guest. Feedback link will also be posted by the end of the session, which should be submitted by the participants within 1 hour after the session ends. Fill the form without fail, as it is considered as the attendance for participation. E-certificates will be issued within a week to the participants who have submitted the feedback form. We start our session with a welcome address by Professor Vijay Nandini, Department of English.
Cynthia, on behalf of the management at Science, I extend a Yes, can you hear me? Ma'am, can you hear me? Hello, ma'am? Hello, ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, you can proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry for the inconvenience. I extend a very warm welcome exclusively to our distinguished chief guest, Professor Dr. K. Challappan, former head, Department of English, Barathidasan University, for his gracious presence and acceptance to share his peace of mind to this webinar on contemporary critical theories. It is truly an honor to welcome you, sir. It is my pleasure to welcome all the faculty members, research scholars, students, and other participants across the country who are here. Once again, I see you all. Now, I request the head of the department, Professor K.Y. Indumati ma'am.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
On behalf of English, Ma Gregorius College, I welcome all of you for this webinar on critical theories organized by the department. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today for this webinar, Professor Dr. K. Challappan, former head, Department of English, Barathidasan University, who has been a great influence on English learners and the teaching community. An MA in English with the first class and first rank from Annamalai University, Professor Dr. K. Challappan obtained with distinction a PG diploma in teaching of English from Victoria University, Manchester. After serving a few government colleges, he joined the Madras English Language Teaching Campaign and became the Special Officer for English. He became the first professor of English in PG Center of University of Madras, which later became Barathidasan University, Tiruchirappalli. On retirement from Barathidasan University, he was Emeritus Professor, University of Madras, and Director, State Institute of English. His dedicated contribution to Shakespearean scholarship, we can say, began with his doctoral thesis on Shakespeare and Ilango as tragedians, a comparative study published in 1985. His major works include Tagore, Bharati, and T.S. The
We
World
begin
on a Stage, Shakespearean Transformation. Passionate about his mother tongue Tamil, he has authorized Oppiyam, Uppilakkanam, Kolgayum செயல்முறையும், Vidudalai Sitrum Puratchi Kuyilum. This is on Bharati and Bharathidasan. Bharathidasan, the poet of the brave new world. Kulothungan, the poet of the knowledge era. Erode Tamidanban, universal vision and dialogue with tradition. Podigayum Tendrelum, Melkatrum, a comparative study. He has translated poems of Bharati, Bharathidasan, work of Mapo Sivangyanam, Kalanjar Karunanidhi, and Kutrala Kuravanji by Kovai Manisekharan. His tradition of Tagore's Gora has been published by the Sahitya Academy. He has published articles on Bharati and Bharathidasan. Undoubtedly, he has built bridges between the two languages, the Tamil and English. He has widely traveled and has won several literary awards such as Poet Bharathidasan Award, Anna Award, Tamil Chemmal Award, the Best Teacher Award, and the South Indian Publisher Award for contributions to English. Recently, he has been conferred Lifetime Achievement Award for translation by a prestigious journal. He was also awarded the Best Translator Award by Tamil Nadu government, Tamil Ariஞர் Award by Ulaga Tamil Panpaattu Mayam, Ilango Award by Silap, Sirpai, and recently Paridamar Kalaignar Tamil Award by SRM University. So we are privileged to hear such a distinguished speaker, and I once again welcome you. Thank you, sir. You can take up the session, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my great privilege to talk to you all on contemporary critical theories. Poetry is silent. Only criticism speaks. Said, not Frank, a great Canadian critic. I used to say in Tamil, கவிதை மௌனமாக இருக்கிறது. அது சொல்ல முடியாததை சொற்களால் சொல்ல துடிக்கிறது. ஆனால் திறனாய்வு அதை எளிய சொற்களால் சொல்ல முடியும் என்று நடிக்கிறது. கவிதை ஒரு துடிப்பு, திறனாய்வு ஒரு நடிப்பு என்பார். ஆனாலும் இந்த நடிப்பின் மூலம்தான் we can understand the reality. Because only criticism unravels the beauty and truth of literature. Criticism makes literature speak, and it helps us to understand the complexity and the creativity of works of art. Huh? And that's why it is said that criticism is to literature what science is to nature. There are four orientations to critical theories. One is the world orientation. You can analyze a work of art in relation to the world, because the world is the basis of a work of art. And this theory is called mimetic theory. Aristotle, Plato, and quite a few others used this theory. Aristotle said that poetry is an imitation of action, but imitation can also bring the real reality. The next orientation is towards the word or the text. And this theory is called objective theory. It looks at the work of art as an independent object. Several modern critics, particularly new critics, look at literature as independent autonomous objects. The third orientation is from the author. The author-oriented critical theories are called expressive theories because it shows that works are expressions of the emotions of an artist. The romantic criticism is expressive. The fourth orientation is towards the reader. The reader-oriented theory is called pragmatic theory. This theory analyzes a work of art from the point of view of the effect on the reader. Because ultimately it is the reader who receives the text. And it also shows how it affects the personality of the reader. This theory is called pragmatic theory, and most of the modern theories and the 18th century literary theories focus on the reader. But there are also approaches to literature, critical approaches to literature. You can approach literature from the moralistic point of view. You can approach literature from the sociological point of view. But both these approaches are called extrinsic approaches. But the new critics in the beginning of the 20th century, particularly from America, they said, don't worry about other things. Look at the text. The text is the most important thing. Don't trust to the teller, trust to the tale. This is what they said. So the attention shifted to the text, its form, and its meaning. Clan Brooks, the great American new critic, said that in poetry, what matters is the inner organic form. And he said this is mainly formed by the complexity of language. The formalist approach shows that the form of the work is inseparable from the work. And the form also is the meaning. And you can find it in tension, in irony, and paradox. Clarence Brooks particularly gave importance to paradox. He said the language of poetry is the language of paradox. Because in poetry, language becomes complex. And even though it says opposite things, ultimately, according to the new critics, they are brought together. So that is why new critics said a work of art reconciles opposites. And, for example, Gladys Brooks analyzed the great ode of Keats, the ode of a Grecian urn. He sees the whole poem as a series of paradoxes. The urn itself is a paradox. It is silent and yet it speaks. And he also says there are songs in the urn. There are songs, eternal songs. These songs are unheard, but they are really deep music. He says, heard melodies are sweet, but unheard melodies are sweeter. This unheard melody is a paradox. Similarly, in the urn, he sees a portrait of a lover eternally pursuing his sweetheart. But his love is eternal, but it is unfulfilled. So unheard music is eternal music. Unfulfilled love is eternal love. And thus he comes to the conclusion, Keats comes to the conclusion, and Clare Brooks explains that the poem says, beauty is truth, truth beauty, and that is all you know on earth. What does this mean? Literature is art, but art is also reality. This is the most important thing. What beauty sees, what imagination sees as beauty is truth. What imagination sees as truth is beautiful. So what Clare Brooks wants to show is that literature embodies truth as beauty. And this kind of analysis is called new critical analysis. The psychological approach practiced by people like Leonard Sulling comes from Sigmund Freud. This approach focuses on the psychology of the reader, of the characters. And for example, Hamlet is shown by a great critic that it is an embodiment of the Oedipus complex. Hamlet's hesitation
கேக்குதா?
According to Northrop Frye, literature is a kind of displaced myth. In myth, there is the unification of human life with nature. And there is correspondence between the phases of day, seasons, and human life. And literature forms a unity, a simultaneous order, something that is spread out in conceptual space. It is this unity that Northrop Frye emphasizes in literature. And, for example, in Hamlet, when Hamlet in the gravedigger's scene, he is reborn by plunging into the grave. This is an archetype for dying into life. Hamlet is reborn through acceptance of death. By accepting the fact of death of Ophelia as well as everyone, Hamlet develops a new perspective, and this is an archetypal scene in Shakespeare's Hamlet. So we can go on seeing several archetypes in literature, but ultimately the archetypes make meanings converge and make us see that all literature constitutes a universal, timeless order. This is also the weakness of archetypal criticism, because archetypal criticism is spatial criticism. It does not see the temporal order. So it is supposed to be unhistorical, but still archetypal criticism makes us see that literature is a connected, coherent system. Now let's go on to see one of the important contemporary theories, feminist theories. Feminist theories became very famous with Simone de Beauvoir and Virginia Woolf, and it's very important because it has made people realize that women's experience has been not been expressed properly in literature. There are 4 models given by Elaine Showalter: biological model, linguistic model, psychological model, and cultural model. I have added sociological model. What do these models indicate? In the biological model, women's literature is related to their bodies. According to a great French feminist critic, women must write their bodies. The unique feminine experience is related to their physical features. It comes from the body, it not comes from the mind. The other model is the psychological model. According to the psychological model, women have certain specific psychological experiences. And for example, their fantasies are related to sex, eroticism, whereas men's fantasies are related to power. But the linguistic model is the most important model in the French feminist criticism, because they say that women have been denied entry into history because they have been denied the entry into the symbolic system. According to Lacan, the great student of Disciple, women belong to the imaginary stage, the pre-Oedipal stage. They are not able to enter the symbolic stage. The symbolic stage is the language of man. The reasoning habits of men are denied to women. But another great French critic, Sixos, says, no, women must enter the symbolic system. Women must recover the language. They can't speak simply men's language. Throughout history, women have been forced to speak only men's language, their categories, and their approaches, and that has virtually silenced women down the ages. In order to get freedom and entry into history, woman must recover her language, and the silenced women must be made to speak. And here I would like to give an excellent example from the Tamil classic Challappan. According to me, Challappan is probably one of the earliest feminist critical literary works, because Kannaki is silent from the beginning. But only when she begins to speak, she enters history, she makes history. And more than that, she uses the body language. She makes the body speak by wrenching her breast and throwing it on the cursed city of Madurai. So, what I would like to emphasize is, Ilango makes Kannaki acquired power by acquiring language. So, feminist criticism also shows that there are unique linguistic features in women's language. They don't follow the sequential, rational structure of men's language. Their language is more based on experience, and they must be allowed to use their own language to embody their own experience. Ellen Showalter says that the British and American feminist critics focus on oppression. The French feminist critics focus on repression. The American critics focus on expression. Oppression, repression, and expression. From these 3 points of view, the linguistic model shows that women must be made to speak their own language in order to participate in history. I'd like to give a modern example from a Canadian novel by Margaret Lawrence with the title The Diviners. Here, it is the story of a mother and a daughter. Normally, in men's literature, it is the story of father and son. But Margaret Lawrence shows the story of the mother and the daughter. And more than that, there are so many revisions, feminist revisions in that novel, because in this novel, woman takes initiative in love making. When a professor of English talks about the Donne's poem and says, hold your tongue so that I can love. Immediately, the heroine of the novel says, it is cruel. How can woman hold the tongue and man alone can make love? And her protest is a protest for love and expression. Ultimately, the heroine of Margaret Lawrence recovers her creativity through her writings, through her novels. She is able to show that women can create their own freedom. Here is a rewriting of T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot gives importance to the divine work in his 4 quarters. In his 4 quarters, he ultimately comes to fire. He starts with air, and then earth, and then water, and finally fire. Margaret Lawrence finally comes to water, because water is the feminine element. In the diviners, the heroine ultimately accepts the divine water, the waters of creativity, and she shows that by tapping the waters of creativity, women can become creators of their own freedom. There is also a revising of the great Christian paradigm: God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Word, the Holy Ghost. But in the diviners, it is the story of mother, daughter, and the human word. It is not the divine word, it is a human word. So in feminist criticism, we see how women recover the divinity in creativity and see that even God is feminine and even subaltern. And then I would like to come here. We have the cultural models, because according to Ellen Showalter, culture has crippled women and it has given certain models, but by the cultural model, women can participate in the entire cultural life and recover their identity and creativity. Lastly, I would like to say something about a very important contemporary critical theory and method called deconstruction. This was introduced by the great French philosopher Derrida. He has questioned the entire European philosophy, which is based on the logos, or the unifying reason. He says, words do not carry meaning. In literature, there is only clash of meanings. There is no stable meaning. So deconstruction brings a destabilized use of language. According to Hillis Miller, deconstruction practices not a referential approach to literature, as it was done by earlier critics, because the earlier critics said that all literature can be related to something outside literature. But according to deconstruction, in literature, literature is the beginning and the end. He calls it non-metaphysical approach to literature, because in this approach, there is no presence of meaning. Everything is constantly shifting and collapsing, and words break the boundaries and begin to indicate opposite meaning. Let me read the poem and say something about the poem. Yeah. Slumber did my spirit see. I had no human fears. She seemed a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly ears. No motion has she now, no force. She neither hears nor sees, rolled round in earth's diurnal course, with rocks and stones and trees. This apparently simple poem of William Wordsworth, according to Hillis Miller, shows that in poetry there is a constant destabilization of meanings. Look at the first stanza. In the first stanza, the poet and Lucy Gray are referred to in parallel lines. The poet says that a slumber sealed his spirit and he had no human fears. On the other hand, Lucy Gray seemed a thing. She seemed a thing, please note that, that could not feel the touch of earthly ears. You know, there is a wonderful parallel as well as contrast in the sentence structure, the rhymes and other things. The poet had no human fears. Lucy Gray is not touched by earthly ears. And what is happening really is, in the first stanza, the poet has no consciousness. And Lucy Gray also seems a thing which is beyond the touch of earthly ears. In the second stanza, there is a complete change. What is it? No motion has she now, no force. She neither hears nor sees. Look, there is a very significant change. There is no poet at all in the second stanza. Not only that, there is a change from the past to the present. She has no motion, no force. In a sense, it elaborates what it said in the first stanza, but it is absolutely opposite to that. And in the last two lines, she is rolled round in earth's diurnal course. What's the wonderful line? She, in the first stanza, she was supposed to be free from the touch of earthly ears. But now she is rolled around in earth's diurnal course. She is part of the rotation of earth. Now it is earth's diurnal course. A very important thing is, in the first stanza, time and space are unified. In the second stanza, also space and time are unified. But there, she was supposed to be free of earthly ears. But now she is part of the movement of the earth, and still she is part of the entire cosmos. In a sense, she is part of time. Look, a thing is very important. According to Hillis Miller, in the first stanza, a thing is used in a metaphorical sense. She seemed a thing that could not feel. In the second stanza, she becomes a thing in the literal sense. She is rolled around in earth's diurnal course. How? Along with the rocks, stones, and trees. In a sense, in the first stanza, she appeared to be alive, but she was not. In the second stanza, she has become a real thing, but she is still universal. She is part of the cosmos. That is, deconstruction shows opposite meanings are made to clash, and whereas new critics also focused on an intrinsic approach to literature. They said the language ultimately unifies composite things. Cranbrook shows there is a deep unity in paradoxes. But deconstruction shows there is no organic unity. There is no clear established structure. Everything has to be dissolved, collapsed, and meaning is not a product, and meaning becomes a process. So this sort of endless recreation of meaning without any stability, without any referentiality is the essence of deconstruction. So I would like to conclude that all criticism must help us to experience literature. And that's what Dr. Fry says. All critical theories are a kind of visible criticism. But ultimately, it must lead to invisible criticism. What is the difference? Visible criticism is knowledge about things. Invisible criticism is knowledge of things. This is a very important distinction made by Plato and the Greeks, and Nathan uses that to show that all criticism must lead from knowledge of things, from knowledge about things to knowledge of things. In knowledge about things, the subject and the object are not united. In the knowledge of things, there is a unity between the subject and the object. And in this process, in this unity of the subject and the object, a learner internalizes the text, and he must be able to discover a radiance, to use the famous phrases of James Joyce. In a work of art, there is harmony, there is integrity, ultimately there is a radiance. Visible criticism concentrates on harmony and integrity, but invisible criticism leads to a kind of invisible radiance, and ultimately all our critical theories must make our learners discover the radiance within and in the text. Thank you very much.
Question by
Any questions?
Participants can post your questions now.
No questions?
Sir, can you speak of Sivox and French repression?
Pardon?
Can
You
you
want me
throw
to-
a little light on Christieve's semiotics in regard to repression?
Semiotics. Oh.
Yes.
Okay, Christopher's semiotics. She is also a feminist, and she uses the term semiotics to refer to the pre-Oedipal stage of language. It is a language of signs, S-I-G-N-S, and she says that literature is not made up of rational, logical structure or texture, but semiotics deals with certain invisible signs, and and she also talks about the mother in one of her essays, how the mother is a kind of a virgin and also a sort of a creator. So her approach is semiotic. Semiotics is the science of science. The first science is science, S-C-I-E-N-C-E. The second science is S-I-G-N-S. According to her, Julia Kristova, that women's language is made of, can be analyzed in semiotic terms and not in rational, logical terms. Okay?
And sir, can you share some points on theories related to subaltern of Amitabh Ghosh and Neil Mukherjee?
You know, the subaltern thing is actually, in theoretical terms, Gayatri Spivak spoke about it. Can the subaltern speak? She says this subaltern cannot speak because there is no one to hear her. So the subalterns have been silent. They are doubly silent. Women are silenced. The subaltern woman is doubly silenced. And the subalterns are doubly colonized. There is a kind of interior colonization in women. And this interior colonization is doubled in the subaltern women. For example, we have Baba and a few others in Tamil. Baba's Karukku and Sangadi, and of course the novels of Ghosh and others. They talk about the people who have been completely marginalized. And in fact, Gayatri spoke about the great French, the Bengali novels and short stories. And so ultimately what I would say is, in subaltern's literature, there is total silencing, and it is the duty of the writer to see that subalterns speak. Is that all right?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your brilliant words. And one last question is there. So can you share some points on digital diaspora?
Digitalized?
Diaspora.
You want me to talk about diaspora?
Yeah, that's what they have asked.
Yeah. In contemporary literature, the diaspora literature is the most popular. People who are being displaced and they have lost the roots. And I would like to talk about Naipaul or our friend Solomon Rushdie. They are excellent examples of diasporic writers. In a sense, both are Indian. Whereas Naipaul talks from West Indies, and our friend talks about diasporic experience in Midnight Children, Shame, and other things. And, and particularly in Rushdie, we find there is a kind of postmodernist analysis of the predicament of the hero, who is split, and ultimately he is trying to unify, and at the end of the novel, he is broken into fragments. So fragmentation is given importance in Midnight Children. Midnight Children shows the hero handcuffed to history, and it shows that there is no unified history of the hero or the country. And in Naipaul, we find a kind of longing, but he's very critical of the Indian roots. But I think it is a novel which got the Nobel Prize. He talks about his ancestors coming to Pondicherry. And there is a kind of coming back to the roots. So in the earlier novels, like A Bend in the River, he talks about the African displacement and other things. And he spent most of his life in London, which is supposed to be a home for people without home. But later, he begins to feel that India is not an area of darkness. And by connecting with one's own roots, with one's own past, one can recover his identity. But still, I'd like to emphasize the difference between the two. I think there is more of an attempt to unify in Rushdie, whereas there is more of alienation in Naipaul. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Feedback form has been posted in the chat session. So all the participants kindly submit your feedback form within an hour.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Fenila James to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say. On behalf of the Department of English, Mar Gregorius College of Arts and Science, I deem it a great privilege proposing vote of thanks. Honorable Person Dr. Challappan, sir, it is a great pleasure, sir, to thank you as one of the thousands who have motivated, inspired, and enjoyed listening to your wonderful lectures.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Mudin sir. Mudin sir. Mudin sir.
Ask him to.
Hello.
Manoj.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay. I'll finish it off.
Sure.
My sincere gratitude to our college secretary, Reverend Father Philip Pulipura, Principal Dr. Shivarajan, and our Vice Principal, Professor Anne Hepzibah, for their support and motivation. I extend my gratitude to the head of the department, Professor Indumadi, for her continuous effort in conducting the webinar. I thank the program coordinator, Professor Vijay Nandini, and MC Coordinator, Professor Lekha, for their continuous involvement. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues. I thank everyone of our department for their involvement. My sincere thanks to Mr. Manoj and Mr. Prasanna Kumar of the LTech services for their wholehearted and devoted contribution for this webinar. My heartfelt thanks to all the participants for your presence and cooperation for the webinar. Thank you all once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, I request all the participants to fill the feedback form within an hour. Feedback form submission will be considered as your attendance. Thank you.